There was nothing to do but run. The whole time, I kept saying over and over, Jesus help me, Jesus help me.
Where's your emergency?
Yes, please help us. We're trapped up on Elm Road in Gatlinburg, up on the mountain at Joy Village. We're trapped.
Are you trapped in a residence or the roadway blocked?
We're in a residence. We're in our home. We're in our car. Our house on fire. Please help us.
Okay,
we're gonna die up here.
Ma'am,
it's all on fire.
Can you hear me?
This fire did some stuff that I didn't know fires would do, burning underground and burning those creosote-soaked poles from the inside out.
There were no predictions of winds with that magnitude.
The fire was coming down the mountain almost as fast as I was driving.
It was just so overwhelming, so overwhelming.
Do I think that the national park at that point in time had any idea where it was going to go or how big it was going to be? No, I don't think anybody could have predicted what we then saw early morning hours of November 29th based on afternoon hours of November 28th.
It was the day before Thanksgiving 2016. Greg Solansky, Fire Management Officer for the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, noticed a black cloud of smoke. It was rising from a nearby peak in the north. Solansky guessed the fire to be a little less than an acre. He hiked the 2-mile trek up the Chimney Tops trail and used a small hand tool to brush away leaves and make a fire break. But second thoughts kicked in. He was alone. It was dark. He decided he could wait until daylight.
Last year, the drought we had across this region was extreme. I mean, it's extreme drought conditions. And it lasted for a good part of the summer into the fall. And this allowed the soil moisture to really dry out.
Solansky met 4 firefighters that Thanksgiving morning at 8. They hiked up to the peak, where they discovered the fire a little larger than when he left it. The long-range forecast called for rain on Monday, November 28th, 4 days away.
Fires used to be very common. When we dissect the tree, you can see all these little scars. These literally are injuries to the tree caused by wildfires. This one tree right here survived and recorded 11 wildfires in its lifetime. The trees don't lie. The trees are telling us that these fires, and if you count this goes from about 1825 to about 1934 on the fires. There's been no fires since 1934. We've sterilized that national park from fire. And now that means fuels have built up. That means that we have much higher tree densities. We have shrubs choking the understory, grasses, twigs, sticks, needles, leaves, logs, branches, everything on the forest floor. That's all fuel, and it's accumulated for 80 years now.
National Guard helicopters and air tankers sat idle in a hangar in Chattanooga. They were on standby to drop water in case of wildfire. Solansky concluded the fire wasn't big enough for the expense. Water drops could range as much as $20,000. He didn't think one would work anyway. He briefed the chief ranger, Steve Closter. The plan sounded good to him. Fog and heavy clouds rolled in Friday and made an air attack impossible. But the fire showed little threat of spreading so far.
And one of the things we noticed a couple of days beforehand was that there was going to be some very high winds. We anticipated that, given the research done on mountain waves, that this event was going to occur.
On his return Saturday morning, Solansky found clouds overhead and frost underfoot. The fire now covered about 6 acres.
So we ended up putting out a high wind watch several days, 2 days prior to the event.
Come Sunday morning, the clouds disappeared. The fire had grown to almost 10 acres.
We ended up issuing what they call kind of a fire danger statement. And during that fire danger statement, we put out that we expected the high winds to produce fast fire growth across the region.
Solansky decided to call for help. A helicopter arrived around 1 p.m. to splash water on the flames. An observation plane noted the fire's size at about 25 acres. Park Service rules called for 3 people to run the operation, but it was a holiday weekend. Dwindling daylight cut the air attack short at 4:30 p.m. From the lookout point, he saw little to worry about. No one stayed to watch the fire overnight.
It was a unprecedented set of circumstances, serious drought, burn bans everywhere, and then you have, as I stated earlier, the game changer of these unbelievable winds.
I think if you read the statement, it's pretty serious. I mean, you have to realize that this is going to be a serious day for fire growth.
At 7 a.m. Monday, the fire stood at 250 acres, 10 times the previous day's size.
In the morning of the 28th, we come to work. There's a haze of smoke in the air, and over the next hour or so, it begins to increase. And we started receiving 911 calls for smoke investigations. People throughout the community were saying, hey, it's smoky. The forecast of the winds was ultra conservative. They ended up being significantly more.
The statement we put out that day, it said, this is a condition that we expect rapid fire growth with the high winds. We definitely expected any fires that are out there to spread quickly. And that's what was said in the statement.
By 2 p.m., the fire stood at more than 500 acres. Estimates placed its speed at as much as half a mile per hour. The fire had split into 2 wings that now threaten Gatlinburg from the east and from the west.
There were still people on the street. You still had people eating Bubba Gump shrimp. There was people taking shots of moonshine on the street. It just shows you how rapidly this dynamic changed. At hour 1, you had people standing on the street, and 3 hours later, we're looking at a total evacuation.
The first reported fire inside the city came at 5:45 p.m.
911, where's your emergency?
There's a fire up here I'm looking at. I'm at Valley View Lane in Gatlinburg.
Valley View Lane?
Yes, sir. There's a big fire about 200 yards, 300 yards, maybe 5, and it's getting bigger.
We go to the Sugarlands, and we're waiting for the fire to come to us. We kept waiting and waiting, and as we're sitting there, we noticed that the fire, we can see an orange glow on our left side, and we can see an orange glow on our right side, and then we realized that the fire has completely went around us.
Authorities estimate more than 20 separate fires broke out within the first 15 minutes of the storm. Before the night's end, more than 50.
911, where's your emergency? We are on Baskins Creek Road in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and we are all about to die if you guys don't send a truck out here. There's about a dozen of us and a baby. Please send a truck. I do not want to die out here.
Ma'am, are you stranded right now on Baskins Creek?
Yes, we are stranded. There is no way out.
You're talking about winds so strong that when you've got a hose line with a fire stream, a water stream coming out of that it bends it and it turns it before it can get to the fire.
Really?
So that really doesn't help extinguish fire when the wind's blowing the water before it can get there.
Around 6:30 to 7 o'clock, I was actually on the phone with my wife, and the cell phone towers went out. And we couldn't, nobody in our strike team could make a call. We couldn't check Facebook, Twitter, nothing. We were literally without any kind of communication at that point.
There had been smoke in the air for days, so that wasn't anything unusual. And I go to bed early, so I was sound asleep, and I was woken up by one of my husband's sun catchers falling out of the window. It burnt the fishing line, and it fell on the floor, and that's what woke me up. And there was already big swoops of fire coming in that window.
It was so very windy that night. The trees moving, and very dark. It was so like a creepy movie. The lights were turning off.
There was no time to do anything I grabbed my glasses, and I was in one of my mother's old nightgowns, and I ran.
I think it was so very hard, very dangerous for the little one, because that night, because of the smoke, he was feeling bad, and then I was very afraid what would happen to him.
When we rounded this corner and all this was on fire down here, I think we had 4 cars. I think everybody just sucked the air out of the cars. We were just supposed to drive out and go home.
The owners of the chalet called us and said, you've got 40 minutes to get out.
And I mean, the wind was just screaming. It'd been blowing like crazy all afternoon.
Running down the road, it was the wind.
Everywhere there's foliage, all the way down to the road is on fire. I mean, it's close, it's right at the road.
It was like running through hell. It was an inferno.
Officers had no time to reach every house, apartment, trailer, campground, cabin, or hotel in the fire's path. Some shouted evacuation warnings from the patrol car loudspeakers.
Please leave the property. This is the police. Mandatory evacuation. Please leave the property. This is the police. Mandatory evacuation.
The city had no way to issue a mass warning other than an old siren system in the central business district. Gatlinburg Fire Captain David Puckett was the commander on the ground. He radioed the command center at 7:12 p.m.
Chief, if the siren system's working, it probably would not be a bad thing to try to do a manual evacuation using that.
3 times he asked to sound the sirens.
If all possible, if we could use the flood warning sirens to assist in evacuation as part of downtown Gatlinburg, it probably would not be a bad idea. I've got fire all the way over Baskins Creek, so we soon be to 321. And then once you've got on Ski Mountain, we set off the sirens to see if we can't get some of these. I've still got a lot of occupants out of video and stuff. We need to be getting them evacuated.
If anyone answered, the E911 system never recorded it. The sirens finally sounded at 8:30 p.m. Greg Miller, the fire chief, had given the order to empty the city 10 minutes earlier.
No one at any time discouraged evacuation or downplayed the need to evacuate. Business, economy, revenue, none of that was ever even discussed.
You could instantly look and see several of the large houses that had been there for years were fully engulfed in flames. The mountain itself, from top to bottom, all the way down to River Road to the very top, was on fire.
As firemen, you know, we're thinking 1,000 different things. We're thinking, wow, there's people up there. They're actively fighting fire. They're on a mountain. What's their water supply like?
I know a lot of the firefighters have told me since that they said, Chief, had you have been able to see where you were sending us, you wouldn't have sent us, because we had to go in areas that our training had always told us not to go into.
We did talk about it later and kind of, to bring some levity to the situation, joked about it, that is this what it's like right before you die? Because I don't know, I'm not a firefighter, and I wasn't not trained in that stuff, so I don't know how much smoke or what the saturation of smoke it takes to kill somebody, so that was definitely in my mind.
No, it was not on my mind that something like this could happen. But again, you know, our key thing that we focus on as a forecaster, you know, we're looking at the meteorological conditions, and this resembled what a mountain wave event was going to look like.
The Smokies have to burn, and it's going to be a big burn. It's not going to be like this Gatlinburg fire, 17,000 acres. We're talking 50, 100, maybe even 250,000 acres.
Days after the fire, authorities charged 2 teenage boys from Anderson County with starting the blaze. A hiker's GoPro camera had captured them playing with matches on the trail. Prosecutors later dropped all charges. The juvenile case remained shrouded in secrecy.
It wouldn't have mattered if we had had 4,000 firefighters on the ground that night. It was like an unstoppable locomotive that was coming through, and it did, and it flanked us in areas that we weren't expecting it.
I think the whole thing is just a miracle to have survived.